So I interned at 2 Sigma last summer, and I returned this fall primarily because of the people I met.
I feel like people here genuinely form a community around shared interests, usually a shared passion for science and tech.
Honestly speaking, finance wasn't on my list when I started job hunting. But when I came here, everyone was so smart and so friendly and so sincere. And I feel like my skill set can be truly valued here, and that's something really important to me.
There's so many cool, exciting projects to work on, and I know I'm going to be working with those people that are super knowledgeable, and that's like what drives me to move forward.
At other tech companies I've worked at, you can kind of feel like you're a very, very small part of a very, very large thing, and that you're kind of expendable that way. Whereas here, people are extremely invested in my success.
This is just the perfect place to be. So yeah, I'm pretty happy I made that decision.
Welcome to KDD 2021 Women's Panel. I'm Nadia Fawaz, an applied research scientist leading inclusive AI at Pinterest, and I will be moderating this panel. I have the chance to be in the company of extremely accomplished scientific leaders who are working on cutting-edge innovation in data science and artificial intelligence and their applications to various domains. We will first get to know our panelists, hear about how they shape their career path and how they drive their technical agenda. In the second part of the panel, we will discuss how data science and AI research are adapting in a fast-changing world. So I'd like to invite our panelists to introduce yourselves and share something you do for your well-being, be it physical or mental. Arti, could you please start?
Sure. Hi, everybody. So I'm Arti Singh. I'm an associate professor in the machine learning department at Carnegie Mellon University. And I got here into machine learning via a pretty, interdisciplinary route. So I got my bachelor's, master's, and PhD in electrical engineering, which involved, at least during my master's, putting like high voltage stuff through, satellite amplifiers and things, all the way then moving into more signal processing, beamforming, and sensor networks. And towards the end of my PhD, I realized that, what I really wanted to was what I was most attracted towards was actually machine learning. So that's how I got here. And then I also did a postdoc that was more applied math oriented, and then eventually ending up again in core machine learning at CMU. What I do for keeping my physical and mental health is playing with my kids. I think that's the best breaker. Like you cannot multitask while doing that. So that's my go-to thing. Thanks.
Thank you. Barbara?
Hi, everybody. My name is Barbara Poblete. I'm an associate professor at the University of Chile, and I have recently joined Amazon as a visiting academic for a couple of years. Before that, I was at Yahoo Labs for about 6 years, and my research areas are basically social media analysis, where I work in hate speech detection, crisis informatics, credibility also of information. And what I do for my well-being is during the pandemic, I started to work out like 4 times a week, and it has done great things for my well-being. I highly recommend that.
Thank you. Luna?
Hi, I'm Luna. I just joined Facebook to lead science there for AR/VR assistant. And in my past 10 years, I have been working on how to make computers more knowledgeable. So I worked at Google for Google Knowledge Graph. And then I worked at Amazon to build a product knowledge graph. So first the generic knowledge graph, and later on domain-specific knowledge graph. In the next, hopefully 10 years, I want to work on how to serve people the right information at the right time and assist the people to be connected to the world. And here it is not just the information in the knowledge graph, but also on the web and on the social network, everywhere, basically. And for well-being, I like dancing and I like traveling. Neither of this is blessed by COVID, but I made it in the past year. Taking traveling as an example, we bought an RV and we made 12 RV trips in the past year. The longest one, we drove from Seattle to Utah, and it is a 2-week RV trip in the Christmas season. It was wonderful. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Munya?
Hi, everybody. I'm Munya Lalmas. I'm based at Spotify. I'm the director of research there. I also lead the research team as part of personalization, around 30 researchers contributing to different parts of search, recommendation, voice, and so on. Before that, I was also at Yahoo Labs for a number of years into various roles. Actually, I started there on the sabbatical, and then in fact in Barcelona, then moved to London to work on art quality. And before that, I was a full academic, full professor at Queen Mary University of London, and also 2 years in Glasgow. My passion has always been evaluation. So I'm less into algorithm, but everything related to evaluation. And for my well-being, 2 things that I do. I have done much more of it since COVID. So it's yoga. I really got into yoga and Prosecco. So they kind of help each other.
Thank you very much. Vidya?
Hi, everyone. My name is Vidya Naval Pakham. I'm a principal scientist director at Google Research. I lead an interdisciplinary team. So we work at the intersection of computer science, neuroscience, and cognitive psychology. My interests are in modeling human attention and behavior at scale for both building products that users love and are happy. I'm also interested in applications of attention for healthcare. My career path has been quite wacky. It's a long story, so I'll try to keep it short. My bachelor's is in CS from Indian Institute of Technology, Kharagpur. And I came to this country wanting to do a PhD in networking at USC. And I was fascinated by a seminar on visual illusions and how the brain fools you into seeing things that don't exist. So I switched to a PhD in computational neuroscience. After a few years of lost in translation, I followed up with a postdoc at Caltech, and I was really fortunate to work with some of the world's leading neuroscientists, computer vision folks, and economists. I was a bit itching to understand behavior in the wild, so I joined the industry, Yahoo Research, briefly overlapped with Munya there in 2010, and then joined Google in 2012. I've been very happy here since. One of the things I do for my well-being, like some of the others said, go on long nature walks and enjoy time with family. My daughter and I, we play all kinds of silly games during the long walks. So,
thank you very much. So we'll now get started with the first question. So you're all very senior, and throughout your career, you have defined technical strategies and set priorities. How do you and your teams decide what you work on, and how do you measure success? And how has that evolved throughout your career? Luna, could you please start us off?
Sure. So this is a great question. And the beauty of working in industry as a scientist is that our innovations can make direct impact right away. And what I learned in my past 5 years at Amazon is this concept called working backwards. So you first need to know what the customers need, and then you decide what are the features you want to provide to the customers. And then you decide what are the technical innovations you need. And then you come back to build the system to launch it, and then decide what infrastructure you need. And this way of thinking, which is actually very different from how scientists typically think, will help you decide, hey, this is the great thing I will work on, and my research will be well-grounded on the real data and applications. However, as scientists, we want to create the future. And so it is important for us to decide, hey, this is our vision, and here are the paths, the techniques that we will invent to realize that vision. So in my team at Amazon, our way of deciding what to do, how to prioritize, I call it working forward and backward. So we first say, hey, this making Amazon more knowledgeable for products, that's the the vision, and here are our moonshot goals, and here is the path for it, and then we decide the milestones. In terms of the measure for success, this was once a bunch of intern students asked me, so how do you measure success? What's the metric for industry? And I said, there is one single metric, that's dollar. And this is certainly kidding, but on the other hand, basically you have two sets of metrics. One is how much you get the users, the customers engaged. And the second one is basically how much of revenue you are making for the company. And as scientists, this is really hard. You cannot say, hey, I make this technique which will be $1 billion. It's very hard to decide that. And an input metric we use often is recall at a particular precision point. For example, what is the recall at 90% precision? And this basically helps us do two things. The first one is once it reaches this precision, we can launch the system. And then later on, as we improve the recall, we will be able to have broader and broader impact.
Thank you very much. And Artie, what's your approach in academia if you don't start with the customer?
Yes, actually, so I was thinking, yeah, I can probably provide a contrasting example in the sense that maybe let me start with metrics, right? To me, the metric is the success of my students, you know, like how have they, or how have I been, right? So maybe the metric for me is like, how have I been able to equip them with the tools, helping them realize their own interests, helping them realize their creative potential, what really makes them tick, how to make it tick, and how to direct their energy towards what they excel at. And this doesn't always mean like students sometimes come in and say, I have no idea what I want to work on. That's okay, right? Like it's not something, interest is not something that you know of right away, but then being able to direct them towards like, okay, here are, you know, maybe some papers in a potential area you could be interested in or not. Like start by reading those, start by critically analyzing those. And I think part of your question was also like, how have we evolved, like, right? So one thing that happened was when I was starting out, I remember I used to read a paper and get it into the technical details and right, like I think getting students from that point where they are like trying to read every single line of a paper to like extracting what was impactful, right? What was the really key contribution here? And can I critique it in a way that can help me identify what I would be interested in contributing? How can I improve over this work, right? And where do my strengths align with that? So to me, really, that's what guides, you know, what I do every day. Of course, another thing I want to mention is just because it comes up so often, it's very hard nowadays to protect students from thinking about publications as a metric, right? Like everybody's just into, oh, people you hire tend to have these many publications, or people who get this, you know, even in the industry who get the, you know, best jobs have these many papers, and trying to get them away from it is something I've personally struggled with, but that's where I try to, you know, again, push my efforts towards. What have you learned, right? That should be the question, at least at the stage at which I'm interacting with these students. So have you, and it is about going back, right? As Luna said, like sometimes you have to go back and think, okay, I tried something, maybe I didn't work. Why did it not work? How can I make it better next time, right? It could be something about your fit with the problem. It could be about the way you approach the problem, or maybe you just didn't do a good enough job searching literature, right? Whatever it is. So just guiding them through it is, I think, my challenge that keeps driving me.
Thank you. So that point on guiding your team, it's actually a great transition for my next question. As senior leaders, you develop your team members. And so how do you help them grow both technically and professionally, Munia?
Yeah, this is a great question. So I want to start with first technically. So I mostly always work with researchers, which mean that they come with very, very strong technical skills. That's why they are hired and so on. So the things to do is to ensure that they don't stay where they are. Those are skill sets, but there's going to be things that we need to move forward. Applying a particular approach to this problem, it will need more thinking, because it's not just I've done this like this, I'm going to now do exactly this and things like this. So In particular with researcher, where the idea is kind of ensuring we are at state of the art or advancing state of the art. So by default, the technical skills will continue to expand, because the problem they will be working will be bigger or different. The things that I pay much more attention, because I think it's less kind of straightforward, is a professional development. So the thing is, I was also in academia, I'm also in industry, is to understand what are the needs, what is success, and so on. So for example, particular product development in industry and so on. So the thing then is to really understand what has to be delivered for success, but at the same time, how this aligns with the research strategy direction of that person. Is it somebody that is more comfortable into more theoretical research or more applied research? And just to ensure that they always work on projects that allow to really grow or expand their CV. I always say to research scientists is like, what do you want on your CV? So it open more choice if what you want to work next, whether within the same place or elsewhere. Is really about what to add and so on. And this usually is when you look at CV of people, you work on this and you expand it into this. So this kind of matching the need of the work to that of what the researcher can do.
Thank you, Munia. How about you, Vidya?
Sure. I personally enjoy mentoring a number of young researchers, so it's something that I regularly do. And at Google, we have regular career growth conversations with all my team members at a regular cadence. And the thing about career is it's your professional life, and you really need to own your career, right? And so one of the most important things that I do is listen. Take the time to understand, where are you coming from? What is it that motivates you? What is it that you want to accomplish in your professional life? What are your career aspirations, right? So rather than impose my view, I take the time to ensure that I understand, where is this person coming from? And the why is something which is very important. Don't just stop with understanding what is it that motivates a person, but why, right? And once I understand that, the rest of my role in mentoring or helping shape the career growth is more of that as the coach, rather than a person who has all the answers available. Okay, so it's about asking the right questions. One of the things that I tend to see is often a lot of people think of career growth in terms of just promotions or better comp. And yes, those are important axes. But I help them understand that that's a narrow, myopic view, and career growth is actually a whole, right? And I help them understand that it's really a multi-dimensional objective function when you think about your career, right? For example, there's technical growth. What are the key technical skills that you want to grow? Especially in research, in CS, for instance, machine learning, AI, it's progressing in such a rapid pace that, gosh, it's so hard for any of us to stay on top of all the advances, right? So it's very important that we continue investing in growing in the technical direction. And we explore ways in which we could do that. For example, we have some no meeting weeks where it's exclusively dedicated for you to focus on growing technically in the direction of your interest in such. And then, of course, there are other aspects of career growth. If you want to grow as a leader, how do you effectively deal with uncertainty? How do you effectively collaborate internally and externally and work on projects with much larger scope and complexity than you're doing today, right? And sometimes in career growth, here is the funny thing, what got you here may not get you there. So it's important to constantly sort of take a step back and ask yourself, what are the tools that I have in my kit? What additional tools do I need? What new muscles do I need to build? So these are questions. So it's really an evolving journey. So what we do is we have a discussion, and then a few months later, touch back, with the report and understand where they are with their journey, what are the next milestones and such. And then, of course, there's also some folks who come back and say, well, I want to improve my visibility. I want to be networking more. Or some others may come back and say, I want to grow more effective communication skills, better presentation skills. So again, the key thing to realize is that career growth is multidimensional. So take the time to step back and get a holistic picture.
Thank you. I like the multi-objective optimization analogy. I'll keep that in mind. So talking about collaboration, your experiences reflect a wide range of collaboration modes between academia and industry, including internships, funding, visiting roles, research collaboration, and some of you have held roles on both sides, actually. So how have these collaborations between academia and industry impacted your research agenda? Barbara?
Yeah, well, I have been in academia now for many years, and before that I was at Yahoo Labs. So my area is mostly data science. So I really need data to work with. So when I was at Yahoo, I was like, I had tons of data, like I had like search engine logs. There was a lot of stuff to work with. So then when I transitioned to academia, I had to kind of reinvent myself in the sense of how can I use all of my knowledge and do it with public data. So in that way, we started working with social media a lot, and always, since it was academia, we were trying to research areas that had public benefit or like social interests. So we started working on crisis informatics, how to detect earthquakes using Twitter. And then we became involved with several crisis management agencies in Chile that actually use our software. So in that sense, my students still get to work with organizations. And also another thing that has been very useful when I was at Yahoo. So I'm based in Chile right now, and Chile is very isolated from the rest of the world, and even more now with the pandemic. But I was lucky enough to go to Europe, to Barcelona, and be in this lab when I did my PhD. I was like a long-term intern at the Yahoo lab, and I met tons of people there. And that was so useful because if I had stayed in Chile, I wouldn't have made all of those connections. So now I know people in the industry all over, and that has helped my students as well, because now they ask me, like, do you think I could go abroad for an internship? And I asked them, where do you want to go? I can contact somebody to help you. So it has brought a whole lot of networks for us here in Chile to have worked in academia and also in industry.
Thank you. Munya, how was your experience?
It's a little bit related to the Barbara, but maybe kind of the other side. So I was in academia for many years, and my passion was really about evaluation. Although a lot of things about algorithms and so on, I was very, very keen on evaluation, and being part of the information retrieval community. Evaluation is a big topic. There's the test collections and so on. So there was a lot of interesting things to do, but there was always this issue that I wanted to go beyond evaluation and more into what is referred to as user engagement, which is a little bit, we can call it in some sense data science. So I had the opportunity as an academic to do a sabbatical, exact same place where Barbara is at Yahoo Labs in Barcelona. But the thing, when I went there, I already had quite a big network. I was a professor. I've been many years in doing research, so I had already very well established people that I worked a lot across the globe, even once writing a paper where people were based in New Zealand and Chile and so on. So I'm used to this kind of network. But then working at Yahoo Labs, I did find the problems more interesting, like because they was much more related to the user aspect. They really made me think, going to more kind of precision, recall, relevance, which are very important in information retrieval, to more is like what it is that is going to engage users and so on. And Vidya and I, we even worked together a little bit when our path crossed. And what I liked was this more in this disciplinary. I do find, like, I was working with people with cognitive science, people much more into data science, and still the algorithm. So the collaboration are within industry, but also across academia and so on. So my career has dramatically shifted to some extent, and I'm still in industry. In a different company, still working on some sort of user engagement, but because I'm becoming much more senior, I tend to work much more on ensuring that all the research scientists are working on the right things. So the collaboration is important to really know what you want to do next, to decide what are the good research topic and where you can do it. Exactly what Barbara said. It's like with some of her students, what can I do next, and so on. And so that is, I think for me, there's a lot of mechanisms with industry, sabbatical and so on, but the collaboration, knowing this network is what makes things work well.
I'm seeing Barbara would like to respond.
No, I just wanted to add something that I forgot, and it's something, it's kind of important right now that for me, because so I'm going to do my sabbatical at Amazon, and I started working first remotely. And this, I started looking into this kind of opportunity because I had been at the university like 10 years, and I really needed this chance to take time to kind of study all the new technology and work on all the new problems, because now it's like my students are studying for me, you know, like I'm guiding them, but I really wanted to get, again, some hands-on experience. I really missed that. And for me, it has been kind of like a blessing during the pandemic, because it gave me super interesting problems to work on. So it was kind of like waking up again to all these challenging things. So I highly recommend it, like to take this time, like every 7 years or whatever, do your sabbatical in industry.
Vidya, would you like to chime in?
Yeah, I wanted to touch upon a related topic that came up for discussion earlier around success. And I feel that's also very closely tied to the context of collaborations, research, academia. One of the questions that I often get asked is, hey, I'm just finishing my PhD. Do you think I should continue in academia or switch to the industry? Or folks from industry wondering, you know, perhaps it's time for them to move back to academia and such. And one of the things that I would like to share, at least in my personal life, I've never thought about my life or career in terms of success or failure. I much prefer to think in terms of my career as a series of micro experiments. Some work and I learn from others. Each one is a stepping stone for the next, right? And what really matters is that you're making steady progress. And as you go through these series of experiments, you're having a lot of fun. You're working in a space that you're really excited, passionate about, right? And you continue learning, having a lot of fun, doing good work along the way, and helping users or helping the research community or whatever it is, the needle that you want to move. Ensure that you're making steady progress in that direction. But don't sweat too much over what the outcome will be. Don't worry too much about, gosh, am I going to succeed? What if I fail? The stakes are too high. I mean, that's usually one of the things that dissuades a lot of women from taking on very interesting opportunities. And let me give you a personal example here. When I was in computer science and I switched, remember I talked about this joke on how I was fascinated by this seminar on visual illusions, and I switched to a PhD in computational neuroscience. I hadn't even taken high school biology. So it was like lost in translation. And there were very few people around me who had made that switch, right? So the logical mind was like asking a lot of questions. What are the job prospects? What is this new field that I'm getting into? Does it even make sense? But there was this, I was really fascinated by that area. So just followed my heart. And it ended up being one experiment after the other, had a ton of good publications at the top journals, got to work with some of the world's experts in that area, had a lot of fun. And then there was this part of the computer scientist in me really wanted to scale these ideas. And I didn't want to be limited by the highly simplified scenarios in which we were modeling attention or human behavior. And when it came to scale, all the action was happening in industry back then. Right? So I had to switch again after 8 years of investment in basic scientific research. When it came time for me to switch back to the industry, there was barely any data point around me. Nobody back then in 2010 had transitioned from computational neuroscience to the industry. So there were, again, a lot of risks and questions in my mind. And I was also pregnant at that time, making a lot of big life changes, so a lot of questions in my mind. But again, just followed my passion. And I said, I'm going to try this as an experiment. We'll see if it works or not. If not, I'll come back to academia, right? Turns out the experiment was wildly successful. I had a ton of fun. One experiment after the other, here I am with a very happy career so far.
Thank you very much, Vidya, for this personal story. Arti, you have your hand raised.
Yes, so I'll keep it very short because I know you've spent some time on this topic, but I just wanted to say that I think I agree with a lot of what has been said in terms of industry to academia sort of collaboration, but also even at the university itself, I think in terms of interdisciplinarity, I can't emphasize of course, my past is also like that, but even now, like interacting with, even though if you look at my publications or whatever, a lot of the research I do is very theoretical and algorithm design and analysis. But a lot of those questions are actually inspired by talking to people in different domains, including from any of the scientific domains. I've worked with neuroscientists. I'm currently working with material scientists, people in agriculture, right? All sorts of domains. So I just wanted to emphasize that point, that it's really a fusion of the ideas, that even if you're in one particular domain, your ideas can be really influential, and you can be influenced by ideas from many other domains.
So we were planning, to now discuss how data science and AI research can adapt in a fast-changing world. And it seems that interdisciplinary work may be key to solving complex challenges and adapting in that fast-evolving world. So, Vidya, you just shared an example of your work switching disciplines and some of the challenges having to adapt and learn a new field. Could you also comment on how the diversity of skills enrich your projects?
Absolutely. Like I mentioned earlier, my background has been very interdisciplinary, and also at Google, what I've been doing in the last 8-9 years, I have built an interdisciplinary team. So we work at the intersection of computer science, neuroscience, and cognitive psychology. And again, the problem that we're trying to solve is quite fundamental. We're trying to understand and model human attention and behavior. You can't box that into any one discipline. From a computer science perspective, human-computer interaction, there's a lot of interesting work on how humans interact with different devices and such. So obviously, there are very interesting insights that we can learn from a computer science perspective. If you look at neuroscience and cognitive psychology, there are decades of research on how the brain processes visual information. How does attention work in the brain, right? And it would be a shame to throw away all those insights. So one of the things that we do in our team, in my research, is in trying to leverage insights from all these different disciplines and try to take a holistic approach towards understanding behavior. So like the whole, I believe, is always bigger than the sum of the parts. It is not easy, right? And as Arti called out, it's not as easy to do interdisciplinary research. And there's also tricky things about too many cooks spoil the broth. So you have to create that right highly collaborative environment where people can feel free. They can welcome diverse new perspectives and feel free to brainstorm, bring in all kinds of crazy ideas, and feel free to critique them. It's really important to have an open, respectful culture where you can have all kinds of scientific disagreements and agreements, discussions, and everybody's perspectives are important and valued. And there are lots of challenges in creating that kind of an environment, but once you do, the payoffs are huge.
Barbara, what's your perspective?
What was the question, sorry?
Interdisciplinary work, the challenges and the diversity of skills, how they can enrich a project.
About interdisciplinary work, well, we have been doing that a lot, as I mentioned before, especially in the area of crisis informatics. So what happened is that at the beginning, there was a professor from the seismology department, and he said, like, I have seen some researchers that are working with Twitter systems to detect earthquakes, and we would like to do that. So this problem was kind of a solved problem. So it wasn't that interesting from a research point of view to work on this problem, but we did it anyways because it would be helpful to that team. And in Chile, we have a lot of earthquakes in that sense. So we worked on that, and what we realized was that all the solutions that existed were based like on classification, and they required a lot of learning data in specific languages. So we had systems that had been trained for Japan for detection earthquake using Twitter, systems in English and Italian, but it was not easy to use this for Spanish. And we did not have the resources to acquire a lot of labeled data. So we had to find like a language agnostic way or less supervised way to solve the same problem. So we had this need that was diverse and different, coming from a country that doesn't speak English. And we had to improve the state of the art by doing a solution that was that would work in any scenario, that would not require supervised learning. And with that, we were able to make available some tools that people can use them in any country. And they're being used in several countries for earthquake detection using social media. So sometimes a problem doesn't seem so interesting from the research point of view when you're trying to solve practical things for other areas. But I think it's still worth it to look at that, because one can find many interesting things, especially from the side of when you have a group that doesn't work so much like us, that we work a lot with Spanish language, and everything has been done for English. So every time we try to do something for Spanish, we have to go back, look at all the research that has been done. We first try to reproduce it, and then sometimes we realize we can't really reproduce it, and we have to find out why. And we have found reproducibility problems that were quite big, for example, for hate speech detection. Like what the state of the art reported was incorrect. We actually ended up writing a paper about that, why, and explaining why we couldn't transfer this knowledge to Spanish, because the state of the art was wrong. It was hugely overestimating the results. But if we had not had this like really different need of classifying in Spanish, we wouldn't have found like the problems in English at the same time.
Luna, what do you think?
Sure. So I think as you are mentioning this sort of fast changes, one thing I realized is that at this time, if you want to make huge impact, you want to do some huge project, it's almost impossible to do it only knowing one single field. And for building knowledge graph as an example, to collect knowledge from everywhere, you need NLP. That's where you do data extraction. You need data mining. So you want to learn patterns from the data. You want to learn patterns from the text. You need databases, how to integrate data from different sources, how to clean up the data. And certainly you need machine learning, and you need computer vision. So you want to collect the data from images as well. And when you build this, after you build this graph, and when you want to apply it in real world applications, again, you need different fields. You need recommendation. You want to use the knowledge to improve recommendation. You need search. You want to use the structured knowledge to improve search, to understand better what people need. And you need NLP for QA, so on and so forth. So you really need a lot of different disciplines, different fields to achieve one goal. And I'm even not talking about, for example, what are other input of the signals from the users, like speech recognition, so on and so forth. So why do we need multidisciplinary research? For two reasons. One reason, as I said, we need techniques to deal with different signals, different applications. And I made a joke with one of my previous students that if mechanical engineering is what is needed to build a knowledge graph, I will learn that. If chemistry is what is needed, I will learn that. We have to stay open-minded to learn what we need. We have to work with people from different fields to achieve the same goal. And the second reason is the inspiration. We know the NLP field, they have been very successful in the past 5 years to be inspired by a lot of technologies from computer vision to apply it in NLP to deal with the language and to advance it to invent techniques that are really great for dealing with human language. And those techniques, for example, transformer, have been then used to sort of improve computer vision. So we need inspirations from other fields, and that can often open our eyes and open our mind for inventing new solutions to solve particular problems.
Thank you very much. Several of you have touched on doing research that helps society, for example, the sexism or the hate speech. And so we've seen rising concerns on unequal access to health, education, and economic opportunity, and social unrest from historical patterns of bias and discrimination, and a growing impact of the spread of misinformation, just to name a few in the recent years. In addition, researchers across a wide range of fields, we're talking interdisciplinary here, have raised the attention to the need for responsible use of data and AI. So how is our research community adapting their focus to help tackle some of these challenges responsibly and have a positive impact for society? Vidya, would you like to start on this one?
Sure. I think all the topics that you mentioned are really important, and the onus is on us as the research community, be it academia and industry, to come together to solve some of the core problems that are at the heart of today's society, be it in healthcare or climate change, right? Or education. Across the spectrum, we have some really tough challenges that we need to come together as a community to solve. Trust and safety are top of the mind in terms of areas that we need to be working on, doubling down in terms of research. For example, detecting fake news and misinformation, right? All the fact checking and ensuring that people have access to authoritative sources. So this is something that, for example, Google has been investing on very actively. Detecting and removing hate speech and hateful content online is very important. But one of the things that I'm personally most excited about is the huge opportunity that AI and technology have in healthcare, right? For example, DeepMind recently announced this breakthrough where they've now been able to predict the 3D structures of the entire human proteome. And this is huge in terms of accelerating drug discovery and medical research, right? And if you think about the pandemic and how hard it has hit the world and all the inequities and challenges that are arising as a result, we understand that the healthcare system is broken and we need a completely different approach. Telemedicine is one of the things that could be very powerful. Let me give you a personal example here. Of course, everyone knows that the COVID situation had been really bad in India recently, and we had a family scare. My mom came down with a very high fever over 5 days, and the entire country was under a lockdown, and I wasn't able to travel. So you can imagine it was quite scary. Luckily for me, I found a telemedicine app where we were able to schedule, browse through a list of doctors and schedule a video call. And that person just called my mom, went over her symptoms, and we were able to order the blood test. Someone came home, did the tests, and when the results came, I was just able to upload it on the app using my Android app. And within a few hours, we got a call back from the doctor who said that, oh, this is not COVID, this is something else, and gave her the medicines. And within a week, she was fine, right? Now, we're barely scratching the tip of the iceberg, right? I was lucky enough to know about this particular app which worked, but this is just to give you a teaser on how impactful it could be if we had telemedicine options, because there's so many people across the world that don't have access to top clinical and other situations. So I believe another huge opportunity is how can we get early screening and diagnosis of a wide range of health conditions using just smartphones and other existing pervasive devices from the convenience of people's homes, so that people don't have to necessarily go to a hospital or such. This is particularly important for remote villages and huge part of the population in many parts of the world that don't have access to healthcare. So I do believe that there is a lot of potential opportunities for technology to improve some of the outcomes.
So you mentioned that we need to come together as a community, but the lasting pandemic has impacted how we function as a professional community, how we learn, how we work, and how we network. And if we look at data from the past year and a half, what are some of the learnings from this experience, and how can they inform the future of work in our research community? Arti, could you please give us your point of view?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I think the past year and a half has been amazing, right? In so many ways, both actually good and bad, right? So I think the most positive part was just seeing everybody really humanify and come together to solve challenges that we had never, imagined, right? So I think it really opened up a lot of doors, ranging from all the way, again, remote participation, whether it is from, people who were, on the healthcare side, like needed some help, all the way to education, where, within a week or so, everybody was able to transition remotely. And in fact, in some sense, improved access in some cases, right? Where the schools faced a lot of challenges in terms of actually conducting things, but a lot of people have access to cell phones, and being able to transition to that modality now opens up the door for making the education side of things, right, much more reaching out to people that it didn't reach out before. Similarly, I think on other aspects like engagement of people from underrepresented countries, in particular, enabling things for women to be involved in things where they don't actually have to travel because of childcare duties, right? People who don't have to, again, visa barriers to traveling, right? Again, for whether it's to attend a conference or for a job interview, right? Things like that. I think it really opened up possibilities that we didn't before. And I think on maybe the more data science side of things, right? Just access to data. And we all saw in action how data can influence policy. So I think that was also a very, I guess we all who work in this field realize that, yeah, that is definitely possible and is only going to increase. But I think for the general public, it was really an eye-opener in terms of how strong and powerful this can be. And this is the place where maybe it gets to both misinformation that we had talked about, right? It was both on the good and the bad side. So we have been exposed to these aspects, and I hope that going forward, we'll be able to tackle and tame the technology that we have. But at least I think the year was really impactful in terms of getting us to think outside our boxes and enabling things that we didn't before.
Thank you. Munya, what's your perspective?
Just very little. I very much agree with a lot of what you said, Artis. I think first we have to acknowledge that it was a tough moment. So the way we're working is not the new normal. We just had to get on with things. So I think it's really important to acknowledge this. But at the same time, there are quite good things. I think we're going to move into more like a hybrid model, a more asynchronous model. It will allow more people to participate. We're helping with the digital divide and so on. So I do feel very, very positive about this. We will need to implement it well. We want to avoid like a two-class thing when we go back to whatever normality is going to be. So tools have gone much better, so we should continue making use to it, and yeah, less traveling, but ensuring that we remain equal. It's not those traveling and those not traveling. I'm not sure how we're going to do this, but we should be able to do a good job because we all believe in this.
So we're now coming close to the end of this panel, and I'll ask you a very last question where I hope for a very short one-sentence answer. So as you look towards the future, what is something you're hopeful about? And RT, can you please start?
Yeah, maybe I'll just say the role of AI and data science in general in informing everyday decisions. I think to me, that's the most hopeful thing.
Thank you. Barbara?
I'm looking forward to having more diverse resources for data science and for AI. We're working towards creating resources for Spanish, Portuguese language. And in that way, I hope that Latin America can become also a producer of AI and not just a consumer. So we're working towards that, and I'm hopeful about that.
Thank you. Luna?
Sure. So I'm looking for more connections. I know the COVID is getting people isolated, but I hope we have the technologies. Virtual meeting is a good example, but in future AR, VR, that will make people feel like we are still all together, even if from time to time we might not be in the same room, but we have some immersive sort of experiences where we feel we are just sitting together, chatting with each other, collaborating together to make the world better.
Thank you. Munya?
For me, it's we're getting better with the digital divides. I was born in Africa, and digital divide is always something that's been in the back of my mind. Also working at Spotify, we want music for everybody and so on. So I think it's going to get better, and AI and data science is going to be an integral part of it.
Vidya?
Yeah, I think the last 1.5 years, as we discussed, has surfaced a lot of important problems in today's society. And we can't pretend they don't exist. So what I'm most excited and looking forward to is us coming together, research, academia, industry, all of us coming together, and as a community taking on some of these core problems that are plaguing today's society. So we make some significant advances to solving these problems, so tomorrow's or future world can be a safer, healthier, and much better place.
Thank you, everybody, for this very insightful discussion. You're all very inspiring role models for our research community. And we will now open it up for audience questions.